Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Movies That Matter. I'm your host, Chris Flaherty, and thank you for joining us. I shouldn't say us, because it's just me here in the studio at Burlington Cable Access tonight, because once again, I'm talking about a movie that matters to me, and to someone who is very special to me. At the risk of bringing the fourth Disney film and fourth animated film to the program, tonight I'd like to talk about 1994's The Lion King. It was the 32nd film from Disney Animation, which was directed by Roger Allers and Rob Minkoff, from a screenplay by Linda Wolverton, Irene Mesci, and Jonathan Roberts. And The Lion King stars the voices of Matthew Broderick, James Earl Jones, Jeremy Irons, Rowan Atkinson, Nathan Lane, Whoopi Goldberg, and many, many more. For the few out there that don't know, The Lion King tells the story of Simba, a young lion cub, whose father Mufasa rules over their home, the Pride Lands in Africa. Simba learns from a very young age that someday he will take his father's place as king, which of course excites him. However, one day his uncle Scar murders Mufasa to take the throne and essentially gaslights Simba into believing he's responsible for his father's death. Simba flees into exile and Scar takes the throne. Simba is found and pretty much adopted by two carefree outcasts, Timon, a meerkat, and Pumbaa, a warthog, and he grows up living their Hakuna Matata lifestyle, putting his past life behind him. Fast forward years later, and Scar has led the Pride Lands into disarray, and Simba is reunited with his childhood friend Nala, and Rafiki, a baboon and shaman of the Pride Lands. Through the interactions with these two characters, Simba realizes he must return home, put an end to Scar's tyranny, and take his rightful place as king. So it's pretty much Bambi meets Hamlet in the jungle. Now, close followers of the podcast will remember that the last time I did a solo outing of Movies That Matter, I spoke about another Disney animated classic, Beauty and the Beast. You'll soon realize that my history with The Lion King is very similar to my history with Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast is my favorite film, and as far as I can remember, is the first film my human eyes ever saw. Well, The Lion King is the first film I ever saw in theaters, way back in 1994. Some of you out there might be too young to remember that you didn't have to reserve movie seats in theaters back then, and they didn't recline so nicely either. They were just the regular old luxurious folding chairs, and it was first come, first serve for the best seating. Well, my mother made sure we got the best seating. And I will never forget the chills in my young body when that film first opened with the sunrise and that loud, grand high note by Lebo M that kicked off the circle of life. The film is already huge in scale, but imagine being a pint-sized 3-year-old in a chair that was too big for him seeing this film. Everything from the opening to the stampede to the final fight on Pride Rock just felt so epic. In many ways, this was technically my first action film, too. Everything about this film just feels so grand and majestic, from its beautiful animation and color scheme to the amazing musical numbers, and then you have so many heart-pounding action moments and heartfelt moments. The Lion King truly is an epic film. Unrelated, but I also remember my mother taking me to Burger King afterwards and getting a Lion King kids meal and the Nala toy that came with it. I'm just going to go through all the Beauty and the Beast parallels as quickly as I can. My father used to work at the Boston Garden, which is now TD Garden, and he used to get us into a lot of Disney on Ice shows. He got us in to see the Beauty and the Beast performance, and he also got us in to see the Lion King performance too. I used to listen to the Beauty and the Beast soundtrack on loop to fall asleep when I was a child. I'm pretty sure I went through a similar phase with the Lion King soundtrack, but I don't remember that so vividly. But I do remember it being essential listening on road trips to see family in New Jersey and California. My family took a trip to New York to see the Broadway adaptation, but this time I wasn't scared and I sat in my own seat. Listen to the Beauty and the Beast episode if you don't know what I'm talking about. Much like Disney did with Beauty and the Beast, The Lion King got special re-releases for both IMAX and 3D screens. The family took the trip down to Providence to see it at the IMAX at Providence Place because, again, this was the early 2000s, a time when IMAX wasn't a big thing. The 3D re-release I saw by myself in college in 2012. I remember having a very tough day beforehand, and the next day we had no classes, so I just escaped off campus and treated myself to a movie. Seeing this classic film in these new formats, again, much like when I saw Beauty and the Beast in these formats, was like seeing it for the first time again. The giant IMAX screens made this already grand film feel even grander, and seeing this gorgeous 2D animation in 3D, it was like a storybook come to life. Some of our BCAT listeners might remember the cinema series I used to do here. For those that don't know what I'm talking about, they were part film lecture and part movie night. where each evening would start with a 10-15 minute presentation on that night's film. Most of the time it would be me presenting, but there were a few other BCAT community members that were gracious and enthusiastic enough to present films for the series as well. But each presentation would cover the film's production history, its cultural significance, and then we'd all watch the film as a group. And much like how I presented the original Beauty and the Beast before its live-action remake came out, I presented The Lion King before its live-action remake came out. I sadly don't have a lot of nice things to say about the live-action remake of The Lion King. I don't think it's one of the better ones, and it's certainly not my favorite of the catalog, but I do hold a tiny bit of sentimental value for it because little did I know way back in 2019 that it would be the last film I would see in theaters with my father. I took him and my mother to see it for his 69th birthday. And now I can sort of get into the why I'm talking about The Lion King this episode. This month marks 1 year since my father passed away after a hard-fought 18-month battle with cancer, and the original Lion King was one of his favorite films, or maybe just his favorite film. I would have loved to have him here to talk about it, but life didn't work out that way, so I'll have to do the best on my own. I know he loved the animation. My dad was a big outdoors guy. He loved the beach. He loved taking walks around Horn Pond and Woburn or just around the Burlington community. He loved exploring the country. My family used to take a lot of trips exploring the West Coast, which I know he loved. So I think just the beautiful animation of the safari, the jungle, the wildlife really stuck with him. I know he loved that soundtrack from Elton John. He'd play it even if I didn't ask for it. I mean, he had to have loved it. Again, road trips to Jersey and North Carolina, those aren't short trips. I mean, much like Beauty and the Beast, I think my love of the film sort of rubbed off on him. But I do think that maybe at the heart of this film is a story of a relationship between a father and a son. And maybe he saw something in this film that I didn't see or didn't understand for years. And maybe I still don't fully understand yet because I'm not a father, but I am a son, so that does give me a little bit of perspective on this story. This film does have heavy themes of legacy, which I think help give it this timeless quality to make it still resonate with audiences to this day. It's about the legacy that the previous generations leave for us to honor, the legacy we create for ourselves and then leave behind for our descendants, or quite simply and probably more poetically, our place in the circle of life. My father has left behind a hell of a legacy. He was a man devoted 300% to his family, his friends, and his community, and that never changed. I and many others still feel the impact he left on this world, and I'll be honest, I struggle sometimes with that. How do I honor such a wonderful legacy? How could I? I think about that scene where Simba steps into the footprints of his father, and his little lion cub paw is just so small compared to that massive imprint his father left on the earth, both literally and figuratively. For lack of a better phrase, my father definitely had big Mufasa energy because he always had this larger-than-life quality about him, and he really was just like a natural-born leader. I think at some point, though, we all feel like Simba, where, we just can't wait to be king and step out of our parents' shadow. But when that moment comes, it's unexpected and the light is just so blinding. You're disoriented, you're lost, you don't know what to do. That's the harsh reality of losing a parent. I used to always say I related to Timon and Pumbaa because, they're the big hams, they're the misfits. But these days, I definitely feel closer to Simba. I struggle to fill my father's footprints, and there are times where I definitely feel lost without him. And that sort of brings me to this story I wanted to share. Ever since he passed, one particular scene has sort of been a comfort to me, and that's the scene where Simba and Mufasa are looking at the stars, and Mufasa tells him, and I quote, "The great kings of the past look down on us from those stars. So whenever you feel alone, those kings will always be up there to guide you, and so will I." And he is essentially telling his son when he's no longer around, he will still be up in the night sky, still watching over him. And that's beautifully followed up on later in the film when Simba shouts at the sky, "You said you'd always be there for me, but you're not." And then a few minutes later, Rafiki leads him to a vision of Mufasa in the sky. And much like the burning bush for Moses in the Bible, it shows him the light and it leads him back on his rightful path. My father said something very similar to me towards the end of his life, but I want to touch on something a family friend told me at the funeral last year, which was to always look for the signs, be open to the universe's messages that our loved ones are still here with us, even though we can't see them. So let's travel back in time to a random Wednesday night last fall in 2022. 2022 was easily the worst year of my life, but I definitely felt like the fall was the lowest of the low points. It felt like life was beating me down for all angles, and I was just really struggling. It was a night shift at work, and I was all alone. I closed the office up, and I was just feeling defeated by the day. So I said, let's just go home. And as I walked out to my car, I looked up at the night sky, and I saw one singular star shining down on me. And Mufasa's words about the stars came to my memory, and I felt Dad with me in that moment, and I broke down into what probably was a very much needed cry. I'm confident to say that now I feel like I'm in a much better place emotionally and mentally, and for lack of a better phrase, my grief is not as crippling as it once was as I come out of the storm that was 2022. And while I still miss my dad so much, I know he's still with me. And when I remember the good times, I just can't help but smile. And I hope that I'm doing right by his memory and honoring his legacy. And I will always remember him when I watch The Lion King or I just hear that epic Hans Zimmer soundtrack. Before we wrap this up, I want to share one more story with you. It's a fun one. I mentioned the BCAT Cinema series earlier. For the Lion King presentation, I did an opening sketch, which was essentially a parody of the opening sequence of the film. But instead of Rafiki traveling to Pride Rock to present baby Simba, I traveled to BCAT from my apartment to present my Blu-ray copy of the film. And that led into the presentation itself. The devil was definitely in the details with this one because I wanted to open up with a sunrise just like the film. So at like 4:30 in the morning on a random Wednesday in June of 2019, my father and I took a camera to the top of the press box on the high school football field and filmed the sunrise with Dunkin' Donuts coffees in hand. I don't remember what we talked about that morning, but I think it was probably one of the best mornings I had with my dad. And in hindsight, I just realized it sort of parallels the scene where Mufasa and Simba get up early to watch the sunrise. Also, the tracking shots of the high school leading up to BCAT, that was me operating the camera in the bed of his truck while he drove. And I remember when we showed the final video the night of the cinema series, he was like, "I shot that. I did that shot." So that's probably one of my favorite projects I've ever done because I did it with my dad, and I know he was just happy to have worked on it with me. He was always happy to lend a hand with my BCAT projects when he had the opportunity. So to wrap it up, I thank you for listening to this special tribute, not just to the Lion King, but to my Lion King. Maybe now you understand why the Lion King matters to me. This was the first episode of 2023, but certainly not the last. Mike Espejo and Liz Gillespie will be coming back soon, and Flynn Reardon will be coming back very soon, in a few days, in fact, so don't go too far away. And some other guests, both old and new, will be coming on the podcast soon, I'm sure. But for now, if you'd like to get in touch with me about the show, you can reach me at moviesthatmatterpod@gmail.com, also on Instagram at moviesthatmatterpod, and Twitter, but you drop the T at the end of that. So you say it with your best Tommy Wiseau impression, at Movies That Matter. Is that even a Tommy Wiseau impression? I don't know. Folks, don't forget to be kind to each other. And when things get tough, find some comfort by watching your favorite film or TV show. Don't worry about what the critics or the box office says. Just watch what you love. Entertainment is subjective, and that's not a bad thing. This has been Movies That Matter. I'm Chris Flaherty. Have a good night.